Today on the podcast is Tommy Grimshaw. We first got in touch in 2019 when he had his project Emerging Wines to raise awareness of English wine. He has since become a true friend and one of the best people to talk to. He's an incredibly great person, has a thoughtful perspective on winemaking and working with nature. And despite his busy schedule, he took the time for an absolutely brilliant interview in the vineyards. So this time, video is mandatory. We're talking about English wine and the people who have influenced him on his way. For our listeners who are not so deeply involved in football, Tommy mentions the class of 92 at one point. The class of 92 is now content of a very popular documentary describing the time in which few now very well-known footballers signed their contracts at Manchester United and together in friendship since childhood significantly changed English and also world football. Paul Scholes and David Beckham, just to name two of them. After getting to know some people in his circle of influence, I'm pretty sure that they too will make their way and become successful even more than they already are. We also talk about English food culture and its connection to wine, and we settle the question of questions once and for all: scones with cream and jam, or jam and then cream. Or, as Tommy would say,
jam and cream is there should be high punishment for that.
Welcome to the Pinot Pixel podcast episode number 161, second recording after I forgot to plug in the microphone. I'm here with my mate, Tommy Grimshaw from Langham Winery in Dorset. Thanks for being on the pod.
Thanks for having me.
We would love to talk about some wine stuff from Dorset and what influenced your style of winemaking.
Sure.
And I want to start with a different question. What made you fall in love with wine?
What made me fall in love with wine? I think I grew up in a small town in South Devon. Wine was never part of my life growing up. Grew up drinking Buckfast tonic wine, which is, you probably haven't tried it, but it's I call it nectar of the gods, but it's pretty disgusting actually. It's just like fortified French red wine that's bought over in bulk, and then they add caffeine and sugar to it, and yeah, it's grim. It's made by some Benedictine monks.
What is it called?
Buckfast tonic wine.
Buckfast.
Bucky, yeah.
Buckfast. I guess it was on a pod.
It's delicious stuff, but yeah, that was kind of my introduction to wine, so it's got like a special place in my heart, but yeah, it's generally, yeah, probably most people would say it's pretty grim. So I think actually what made me fall in love with wine as I know it now is probably more who made me fall in love with wine, and that's got to be Duncan Schwab, the winemaker at Sandwich Barton. I started labelling wine for him in 2013 as a summer job to earn beer money. Yeah, I failed my first year of A-levels. And Duncan, I think he was short-staffed at the time. He must have been desperate, and he needed someone to help on with the harvest in 2013. So yeah, he offered me a job, and so I left school and started making wine. And went off travelling for a bit, came back, and still didn't really know what I wanted to do. So I started labelling and bottling again. But this time I was kind of bottling the wine from the harvest that we'd done in 2013. So now summer 2014, we were bottling this wine, and I kind of was then, how's it got from where I left in November 2013 to now in the summer of 2014? What's happened in that period? Mm-hmm. And yeah, Dunk's like started teaching me and showing me, and I was lucky. I was with my mate Ali, who's now over at Jim Barry in Australia, and then Charlie's now making the wines down at Sandridge. And like the three of us kind of had like our uni years there. And yeah, kind of, I guess, for a sporting reference, kind of gets you go like that was sort of the class of 92 at Sharpham, you know. It was like three young lads had, you know, coming up through, and yeah, I think all three of us have now stuck with winemaking in different parts of the world, and yeah, probably haven't quite achieved anything near what the class of 92 did in football terms, but yeah, we've really stuck at it and fallen in love with winemaking, and I think that all three of us to have done that under Duncan is a massive credit to him as a person as well as a winemaker, I think.
So he was one of your first mentors.
Yeah.
Who else participated in your today's approach to winemaking?
Inspiration comes from top growers in Champagne, like Silos, Agrippa, Elise Collan, Jerome Prevost, yeah, you know, amongst others. I remember sitting at Sagram Wild in Paradise Row with Tom Wedgery, who I started Emerging Vines with, and I can't remember what we were doing. We were obviously about to go out to some sort of do, get drunk somewhere, but he was like, let's go for dinner first at Sagram Wild, and he ordered the Timothy Strobel 2014 Sous-Bois. And that was my first taste of grower champagne. And it just, you know, like sometimes, like whether it's wine or just anything, like sometimes something just stops you in your tracks. You're like, whoa, like I need to know more about this. And I had one of those moments with that wine. It was the first time I'd had like a sparkling wine of lower pressure, with the intensity and fruit purity and just richness and layers, and there was just so much going on that was more important than the fizz. Like it was a fine wine first, and then it was a sparkling wine, and I hadn't had that with a sparkling wine before. I was never too fussed about sparkling wine, to be honest. And that just kind of flipped my mentality on its head. So then I started exploring more grower champagnes, and that led me to Langham and to Daniel Ham, who's the winemaker before me here. And in 2017, he switched to Langham wines from, you know, really decent, but probably quite like classical, typical, what you'd expect for, you know, Grand Marque champagne or for English sparkling wine. Like really good, but just, you know, not quite the style that I personally enjoy. Dan Miff started to explore the more sort of low intervention, so wild yeast based ferments, more oak usage, not filtering, not using fining agents, lower pressure, lower dosage, that sort of thing. And Dan was the only one in the UK at the time really looking at what the growers in Champagne were doing. And so, yeah, I joined Langham at the end of 2018, I think, maybe to start of 2019. And then, yeah, like a year later, Dan left to focus on offbeat. And then, yeah, I managed to take on the reins and keep driving it, I think, and pushing what Dan started in, you know, my own little way. But, yeah, I have to give Dan huge credit for making my life a bit easier in the transition of the Langham wines.
Was it difficult to take over?
I think
the age of, what was it, 23?
23, 24, yes.
Wow.
I think 24. Yeah, I think I'm probably looking back, maybe I was too young. But you kind of like when an opportunity like that opens up, like I felt like I had the experience and I knew the style I believed in. And I had Duncan and still Dan as mentors, and I always will. So, but yeah, like now I definitely like feel confident in where we are and the style that we're producing and where I want to take it. But yeah, it was quite daunting. It wasn't easy, you know. Like, you know, that first year, we were named the best sparkling wine producer in the world by the IWSC, and I was like, oh, okay. Like now there's a reputation to uphold as well. But yeah, like it's a lot of fun and I love it. So yeah, I think like I've sort of probably grown as a winemaker quite a lot in the last few years.
What was the biggest superpower you had as a young head winemaker?
I have no idea. Biggest super. I think for me it was my biggest advantage. I think is that I never studied winemaking, so I've never actually.
Why that?
Well, because I don't do anything as a textbook says. Yeah. You know, it's like okay, people do it this way. I'm not going to do it that way. Let's try something different. And then you realize why people do it that way. But sometimes you come across like interesting little quirks and interesting things that you have much more creative freedom, I think. And I'm lucky that we've got Justin Langham who backs us and supports us in the winery and lets us kind of not necessarily completely do what we want, but have a lot of creative freedom. And as long as the wines taste good and, you know, and obviously sell, then we get a lot of creative freedom in the winery, which is hugely important as a winemaker.
I didn't know that his last name is Langham.
Yeah.
Ah, okay.
Hence the Langham Wine Estate where we are.
When was it founded?
So Justin planted the vines here in 2009. He bought the farm as a mixed farm in 2004. But wanted to diversify into something maybe a bit more interesting. I think as an arable farmer, you sell a lot of your grain to market, and they'll assess the quality at the market, tell you how much they're going to pay you for it, and you don't really know where it goes. So you don't have any control over the price or, you know, the
Yeah.
end product. So I think he wanted a crop that, you know, could actually engage with an end consumer and be a bit more passionate and like and proud of. And his dad had a small vineyard, not far from here at a family house, and I think it always got frosted. And if it didn't get frosted, it got eaten by deer. So I think they like really wanted to like make some wine together.
Okay.
And yeah, and they managed to do that actually before his dad passed away, which is really quite sweet. So that's kind of how it started. But 2009 was this planting of 12 hectares. So we got this field and then a field just behind the camera there. And then we, since 2020, have been selling out of all our wine. So we decided to expand the vineyard to 30 hectares. But the final little bit's going in right at the time of recording. It's going in a couple of days, but by the time this comes out, we'll be up to 30 hectares.
Oh wow. Okay.
So yeah.
Couple of days. Yeah. Next Wednesday.
So yeah, so it's coming out. Well, when you're listening to this, then yeah, it's already next Wednesday.
Yes.
And the vines have been planted.
Okay. Yeah.
So yeah.
The starting focus was on Chardonnay,
Chardonnay, Pinot Noir, and Meunier, yeah.
and still the same.
Mm-hmm.
So just the three.
We've planted a small amount of Pinot Gris, just 2,000 vines. Yeah, I think I got so annoying in my request for some Pinot Gris that they all gave in. I put a little bit in, but I think I really wanted some Gris. I want to try and do some sort of skin contact things and maybe some clay and terracotta. And then, if the acidity is too high to do any still wines with the Gris, then I think it can be a really nice blending component for sparkling. And actually, Charlie at Sandwich is really proving that to be a good point at the moment with the sparklings that he's producing.
Mm-hmm.
So, yeah.
They have some Madeleine Angevin.
Yeah.
What about that?
Yeah, it's a fun variety. Yeah, and they seem to be able to work wonders with it. So I think Madeleine can be a bit like Bacchus. Like in the right hands, it can be wonderful, and otherwise it can just be like really aromatic and a bit one-dimensional. So.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. What I didn't tell you about is that I have this little game on the podcast.
More games. I hate games.
I would never try to copy Tommy Do, Tommy Don't from the Making the Merchant, but I call it red or white. So basically, it's black or white, like either or questions.
Yeah. Okay.
And you should take one direction. And there's two chapters. One is called Wine, one is called Life.
Okay.
And due to the fact that we will talk about your side projects in the end, I would start with wine this time. You just start with Life. Chalk or limestone?
Limestone.
Why that?
I think it's fundamental to what we work with here. I think we're working with, looking at the Portlandian limestone down not far from us. I really enjoy the way that the Chardonnay works with it. I think I believe it's one of the reasons we get such beautiful salinity in our wines. But chalk's also great. I think the two together make a really good match.
Is there vines on chalk over here?
Yeah, we're on chalk and limestone here. There's a small amount of topsoil of clay, but it's mostly chalk and limestone where we are. There's Culver and Corallian, so our two classic cuvées.
Next question. Culver or Corallian?
So Corallian.
For the listeners, one is Pinot based, one is Chardonnay based?
Yeah, so Corallian is Chardonnay based. Culver is Pinot based. It depends on the time of year. Corallian in the spring and summer, Culver in the autumn, winter. It just works well like that. Corallian's more Chardonnay, it's fresher, it's more vibrant. Yeah. I think in the summer that works really well, and in the autumn you kind of want like a nice little hug. So yeah, the Culver gives you that.
Good that you changed your answer, because otherwise I should have taken the cap back, the Pinot cap.
Yeah, Chardonnay
so
would have.
It's just the Pinot brother.
Yeah, I guess Chardonnay would have been too expensive if you pay per letter. So.
Yes. Yeah, a big. Yeah, too big for the hat. Traditional winemaking or modern innovation?
Can I just keep painting shades of grey and go down the middle?
Do that.
I think both. I think, obviously, like modern techniques, modern equipment has helped to ensure that you can be relatively hands-off in your winemaking, but still put out really, fine wines that are clean and fault-free. But I think wines that are overly worked and overly sort of made in a technical way can just be a bit flat and a bit dull and not representative of the site. I think people often talk terroir, but don't actually represent it at all in their winemaking, because they're so keen to be a winemaker. You know, I think actually the hardest thing about being a winemaker is, you know, doing as little as you can. I think as humans, we want to be involved. We want to steer the course of something and control it. But actually, the hardest thing is to take a step back. So it's getting a balance of, you know, the old school, but then using the new equipment. Because it has to be fine wine first. You know, I'm not here to make really funky, nutty, faulty wines. I'm here to make fine wines and manipulate them as little as possible.
What do you think when we will be able to talk about terroir in England?
I think you probably can already. But I think with sparkling wine, it's hard because you always have a second fermentation. So you're always going to have, you know, that bubbles, which can easily mask that sense of place. If that's what we're trying to capture, is this sense of place. And then it's you know, I think we've got to see areas like the Crouch Valley where they are proving that they can, you know, it's a really unique place. Then maybe you can talk about, you know, that in terms of if you want to look at appellations or things. And I think it has to be proven on wine quality and distinctive wine styles, rather than county borders that are, you know, sort of politically created from years ago.
So I guess you already answered the next question: English sparkling or specific PDOs?
I think at the moment we've got to keep with English sparkling. You know, there's still, you know, loads of people in England don't know that we exist, let alone around the world. So I think you have to have a voice as English sparkling, and then you can start to separate into distinct. And also I think like a lot of producers are growing fruit or buying fruit from all over the country. So, you know, that's where I love what we do here at Langham, where it's one single vineyard. We don't buy any grapes in. We only work with this specific site. So I think that attracted me with that, again, with the grower-producer model. If we want to, in our sparkling wines, do the best we can to show our site and begin to look at terroir, then, you know, it has to start with quality fruit grown on this one single site, and then try and manipulate it as little as possible in the winery. But yeah, you can have sparkling wine. You know, you have the bubbles to contend with. You're going to have a bit of autolysis. You know, our dosage is low, but it's still there. We use oak to try and harness the acidity. You know, that's like how much of that is what I do, and how much is the fruit, and trying to get that balance right. But yeah, we've got a little Solera on the go, which you might want to talk about later.
Yeah.
But that would be an attempt to look at.
And I guess you have to articulate a lot to the customers.
Yeah.
That they get it, feel it.
The first thing is, do you like it or do you not like it? You know, I want people to if, you know, drink more English wine. If people come to us and they like ours, go and try another English sparkling wine. Like, go and explore the amazing producers that are out there. Yeah. And you know, we say a rising tide lifts all ships, and I think that's something that we should really be working on as an industry in the UK, is just encouraging people to drink English wine. And we'll all benefit from that, rather than, you know, arguing about Sussex or, you know, different PDOs and appellations. You know, we should all be working together to get people drinking English wine and acknowledging it for its quality first. And then, you know, we all do different styles. You know, our style is quite different to a lot of other English producers. So there's no reason why wine list couldn't have our wine alongside others, and we can share that space.
Yeah. Last question: vineyard tour or wine tasting? Especially, I think, when you look at communication towards customers.
Yeah, I think the wine tasting.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think because you can, through the wine tasting, you can kind of describe your vineyard practices. Ideally, you do a wine tasting in the vineyard, right?
I was expecting that.
Like, look at us. We're sat on this table here.
Without wine, actually.
Yeah.
Why? I've just forgotten it.
Yeah, that's it's a massive oversight. We don't need it.
We have water, so this is fine.
But yeah, ideally, you'd have a wine tasting at the vineyard, and then you can actually have a look around. You can get that, you know, feeling for where you are, and then how that then transcends into the glass. I think that's important. But through a wine tasting, you know, hopefully, if the person's delivering the tasting, you know, is good at what they do, they'll be able to take you to that place. I think the best sommeliers will go for a wine list and they'll share the stories of the producer and almost like transport you as if you're, sat in the Mosel, even though you might be in Dorchester at at a restaurant. But like the best sommeliers will do that and with real passion. And I think if you're doing a wine tasting, you should be able to get that same result.
And I already got the feeling that wine tourism is a key indicator or a key for you as a domain winery.
Yeah, for sure. Like we're in the southwest of England, on the Jurassic Coast, which is like world renowned. So we have a lot of tourists here anyway. And I think a lot of people, especially in the UK, feel that English sparkling wine is quite expensive, and you often go, well, why would we buy that instead of champagne? Or why would we buy English sparkling wine rather than champagne? But if they come on a tour, they see the amount of work, they meet the team, and they realise actually how much goes into it.
Yeah.
Then like, oh, okay, so now I understand why it costs what it does. And actually, they often leave thinking, oh, English sparkling wine's better value for money than a lot of the big house champagnes.
Yeah. I mean, you are a bit hidden with the winery, but at least you can spot your vineyards a bit, because usually it's protected by those hedges.
Yeah.
It's tough to see, especially even if you live over here. It's not easy to know that there's vineyards.
Yeah, for sure. It is not helped by the council making it so expensive to put like the tourism signs. So we've got the main road, like just over the hill there. And we wanted to put some like big tourism signs, like Langham Vineyard, like tourist.
But you have the little brown ones at least.
Yeah. But on that road, they were not so expensive, but they weren't cheap. To put them on the main road, it was I think like £20,000 per sign. So £40,000.
Why?
I have no idea, which is really frustrating because this is like the fastest growing agricultural sector in the UK. It could be a really beneficial thing for tourism across the country, from north to south, east to west. And there's no support really for wine tourism or just for English wine generally. So,
is agriculture a thing in school, in education, part of education?
Not so much. Like college, if you instead of A-levels, you can go to college and do more vocational agriculture routes. And then there's a few agriculture universities, but the people that go to those tend to have already come from an agricultural background through generations or like growing up in the countryside. I think it's a real missed opportunity, really. I didn't come into wine because I learned about it at school and thought it could be really interesting. I just fell into it, as I explained earlier, and Duncan was like, cool, and just picked me up, which is a real shame. I think we need to show to more people, whether it's in the vineyard or the winemaking or the wine industry generally, that it's a great opportunity for people.
Yeah.
And I think wine's beautiful because it combines, arts, as we touched on, and more sort of like artistic end of the winemaking spectrum, or whether you're a graphic designer wanting to do labels. You've got your biology, chemistry and physics all at play. Geology and in terms of your soil structures and, geography, your sense of place. You've got marketing at play. Maths, constantly using math in the winery. So there's so much at play. And no matter what your interest is and your passion is, you can channel that through the wine industry. And it's such an exciting time to be part of English wine. That's just a shame that most people find out about it too late, when they're already on course to do, something that, might not allow them to use their passion in the best way.
What is a good way to attract more people to the job in the wine industry?
I think it's just making sure that it's visible. I think we need more people from all walks of life as well. I think the wine industry's got a stigma, probably rightly so, of just being a load of middle class, rich, like older white guys. Because generally it pretty much was and probably still is too heavily weighted that way. So we need to encourage more diversity into the industry. And I think then, once you kind of get that snowball effect going, then it will come. We're not allowed to go into schools and say, hey, come work in wine, because they're not allowed to drink.
It's difficult.
At which point, by the time you get to 18 and you can drink and then you can tell people the wine industry exists, they've already decided which university degree they're going to do, and it's too late. So most people come into wine as a second job, a second career. So I don't have the answers there, really. I just think doing more podcasts and things like this, social media can be good. and just encouraging people when they come around on the tours and stuff to say, if you want to get involved, like, you know, reach out. We might not have a job, but there might be a winery down the road or vineyard down the road that might. And I think just being open and accepting and just willing to train people from the ground up is going to be important.
Are there internships offered during summer?
Yeah, but they tend to mostly be with internships you have to study as well. So they tend to be down in the southeast where, you know, you have like Plumpton College, which is great. We're working on trying to bring something to the southwest, but it's not always so easy. You know, I'd love to be able to return the favour, you know, as Duncan did to me, where he just, you know, I had no interest or no experience in wine at all, and he ignited that passion and trained me really from the ground up, which must have been difficult for him. There must have been days when he wanted to bang his head against the wall, you know, but he persevered and trained me up. So I'd love to be able to do that for someone who's not quite sure what they want to do in the local area and train them up. So hopefully with our expansion, there'll be opportunities to do that.
I mean, I know Duncan only a bit, but the way I know him is also he's down to earth. He's very patient, and this is what I also feel when we work with each other, we talk to each other. So, good influence.
Massively. Yeah, I got married last year, and he was the celebrant at our wedding. He's not a celebrant at all, but yeah, we asked him, and he said yes. So his daughter now thinks he's a vicar. So, but yeah, like he's had. Not only is he a great winemaker, he's just like one of the most amazing humans I've come across, and I've just like utmost respect for that man. Yeah.
Very cool. I have a list of side projects and things you experiment with. What was influenced by him? Is there one?
I don't know necessarily like any of my side projects were necessarily specifically influenced by him. I think just having an open mind was something I definitely learned from him, which then probably allowed me to look at all these different side projects and question things and try things and be experimental. That's kind of come from him. So that's probably then led into all of my side projects. But there's not one of them that was specifically, you know, Duncan's inspired one of them.
The one that excited me first and foremost was the Solera project.
Yeah.
You started in 2017?
Yeah, well, I was lucky. I've tried Solos a few times, but I think I've only paid for it once. And yeah, I like just, I can't afford to drink those wines. So I thought, let's try and make our own. Basically is what it came down to. And, you know, I just really like the way that he was taking techniques from Jerez and Burgundy and Champagne as well, and just combine that all into the really like intense oxy wines that he's producing. And yeah, I kind of want to do something similar. I wasn't, you know, you're never going to be able to copy what he does, and I have no intention of wanting to copy what anyone else does, but just taking those techniques. We can do like a full traditional Solera, but we've got a 2,000 litre Slavonian oak foeder, and we're basically doing it as like a perpetual cuvee. So started in 2017, Dan left a 600 litre punch in, and in 2018 a 500 litre punch in of really exceptional parcels of Chardonnay. So one of the first things I did was I blended that with some 2019, the best parcel from 2019, and we bottled half of it as a premium Blanc de Blanc, which is now our perpetual cuvee. And then the other half's gone into our foeder with then the best Chardonnay from 2020. And since then we've bottled 4 barrels worth as our Blanc de Blanc. And we've chosen the best 4 barrels of Chardonnay from each vintage to top up our foeder. So it's a constant evolving perpetual cuvee.
Wisely chosen, not always the same.
Yeah. Yeah,
Parcels.
we any parcel of Chardonnay can be in the foeder if it wants to be. Just some are lazy and can't be bothered, and others really go for it. And we keep records on exactly, you know, which rows in the vineyard every parcel comes from, and thinking, okay, is there any correlation between you know, our favourite parcels from year to year? But haven't seen any clear correlation yet.
When you say the best parcels, what is the main focus? Balance?
Yeah, I think with the food, with the stuff that's going into the perpetual, you know, it's going to be aged for a long time. So you want the acidity still, but you also want it to be really broad and big and a powerful wine. You know, and we've got to pick the 4 that kind of balance that acidity with the boldness and structure, as well as, you know, really good intense fruit profile.
So it could also be that in good years or bad years, it changes in the amount you put into the Solera system?
No, it'll always be the same amount.
Okay.
Yeah, it'll always be 4 barrels. Yeah. which is nice because it keeps it consistent. And then going back to the earlier conversation about terroir, I don't actually really like the word terroir. I think it just gets bounded around too much. But I think if we want to have a sparkling wine that gives people a sense of place and a flavour of this specific part of the world and this beautiful part of Dorset, and Langham wine is going to be this Solera, perpetual cuvee, because it's multi-vintage. You're nullifying vintage variation. You're just going, okay, this is what over a 6-year period, or in years to come, a 30-year period, this is what you taste as Langham Chardonnay.
And at least in the beginning, it's the signature of Tommy Grimshaw.
Yeah, I guess.
What belongs to terroir as well.
It's like I guess I put it together, but it's hopefully you're tasting the fruit in the site more so than my impact, and that's what we try and do with the wines. But obviously that's a stylistic choice that comes from not just me but the whole team here. We're all collectively doing this together. I often end up sitting down and doing things like this, same way as the head chef usually has their name on the restaurant door, but actually it's a huge team effort, and I wouldn't be able to do this without James, Becky, Blondie, Wendy, Lottie, Franz in the vineyard. And then I had Andy alongside me for a few years. He's now gone to Black Chalk. We've got Carl and Mark and Emma in the tasting room, and obviously Justin, and then Callum, our sales and marketing team. So it's like it's a huge team. If I've forgotten anyone there, mate, I'm going to have to walk out. I'm not going to be allowed in the
That's fine.
in the tasting room. But it's a huge team effort.
Where else is there? There's the floor project.
Yeah, the floor. That's just like a reserve wine. We looked at doing it maybe as a still, but we weren't convinced it was going to be altogether complete and round enough to do it just on its own as a single wine. So we're keeping it as a reserve wine, and most of that goes into the Corallian because we want the Corallian to have like a sort of nutty, almost Fino sherry-esque aroma. And we find that that sort of floor-aged reserve, which is in concrete underground, is really bringing that. It brings an amazing viscosity as well. I wasn't expecting the wine to be more viscous, but it is. Yeah, it's something we hadn't expected. It's good fun.
And then I learned about 2 other crazy projects. One I even can't spell. What is it? Ratafia?
Batavia, yeah. Yeah, I love Batavia. And quite often people ask, oh, do you do a demi-sec? Do you do a sweet wine? I don't like demi-sec. Like, I think, again, it comes back to, like, as a winemaker, you can only really make the wines that you believe in and the style you believe in. That's something I definitely learned from Dunks is, if you make a wine that you want to drink, you'll be able to make it at a far higher level than if you try and make a wine that you don't really like. Because you just won't put the same passion and effort into it. So I was like, no, there's no point doing a demi-sec. I won't be able to do it to the same level that it probably deserves to be. There are far better winemakers out there that would do a demi-sec to a far higher standard than I ever will. But I really like Batavia. So it's, from Champagne is it's basically fortified grape juice. And so we're hopefully going to team up with a really top distiller in the UK and send him some Pinot Noir this year. And he'll be able to distill that into
So you
an
receive
eau-de-vie.
the juice?
He'll receive whole grapes,
Okay.
whole clusters of grapes. Work is magic. And then send us back the eau-de-vie from grape. And then we'll be able to, in the 2025 vintage, take some Pinot Noir juice straight from the press into a puncheon with the eau-de-vie, which will kill off the yeast, to fortify it essentially. So they prevent the fermentation. And then you just have 20% alcoholic grape juice.
20%.
And then you start that as a Solera as well, like a perpetual cuvee. So now it becomes multi-vintage.
A lot of effort.
Yeah, but
Sounds amazing.
there's many things in life where you can't cut corners, and if you put the effort in, you'll get the rewards. So
Fun is the most important thing.
yeah, for sure. I've got the attention span of a spoon, so it's like I need these projects to keep me like excited and probably switched on into what we're doing.
The other one is called Nothing But Grapes.
Yeah.
What is that?
I wanted to see if you could, because it comes back to saying, well, okay, we touched on earlier, you can be quite low intervention and hands off in your first fermentation, but you always have to do a second fermentation with yeast and sugar, which is, again, why I struggle with the term terroir in sparkling wine. But then I was like, what if you were to use fermenting grape juice to inoculate your base wine rather than a wine and sugar solution? So yeah, we kept a barrel of 2020 Chardonnay. 2020 was a great year. Most of it, there was no SO2 use. It was all spontaneous. We tried some wild mallow as well. So we chose this barrel that was just grape juice, completely untouched. Nothing else added at all. And then in 2021, we just took some fermenting Chardonnay juice, which was exactly the same, just completely untouched. Caught it at peak fermentation. Calculated the amount of sugar that was in it when the ferment was rocking. And then blended it into our barrel and worked out like how much we needed to get to the 4.5 bar pressure that we were looking for on the finished wine.
Mm-hmm.
And yeah, it's fermented all the way through. The only thing is that 2021 was quite a cool vintage, so the acidity is like
Intense.
yeah. And on that juice there's no mallow, so from the 2021. So it's either going to need a long time on lees or some form of dosage. But then how we did a dosage with just our Chardonnays is something I need to work out. But yeah, essentially it's just Chardonnay from this part of the vineyard. And yeah, it's a full traditional method, Blanc de Blanc. There's 500 bottles in the cellar. We'll see if it ever comes out. It might just stay hidden forever.
For the team.
Yeah, maybe in 50 years if that English acidity comes out, But, yeah, it's fun. I just wanted to see if it worked. There are some champagne producers doing it. I think Westwell maybe actually brought out a Meunier or a Pinot Noir that's done in the same method.
Okay.
Which I'd love to try. So I'm not the only one trying it, and I definitely didn't invent it, but it was one of those where I knew people were doing it, but no one was sharing the knowledge of how. So you kind of had to work it out for yourself. So yeah, I thought I'd have a play, and it worked. I think it was Andy's first harvest here, and middle of harvest wheeled out the bottling machine. It was like, what are you doing? Yeah, so, but he came around to it, I think.
So once you figured it out completely, we do another podcast episode on that.
Yeah.
Video and documentation.
Let's do it.
So
I'll do a Pinot as well.
How to video.
Yeah.
Cool.
Step by step.
I want to talk about some innovations and stuff you do. For example, the Cofondo, or this crossover product with beer, I guess,
Yeah.
or something. But before we do that, second section, more live, so get more general thing.
Yeah.
So 4 or 5 questions. Maybe something that contributes to the things we talked about. Vintage or contemporary?
What, in life?
Yeah. I mean, you can have a look on winemaking, but just...
Yeah. Like, I'm just thinking in life I love to cook, and it's probably a combination of both again, like I love making pasta from scratch, which is, I guess, more of a vintage thing, but I quite like having a machine that I can roll it with, I love listening to music and vinyl, but with a slightly more modern setup, rather than your gramophones and
So
things
shades
like
of grey again.
Yeah, I'm coming across as a really beige grey guy. But yeah, I think it's the best of both. I think it's important not to lose touch of where you've come from and what's come before, but also, there's a lot of benefits to modern technology and the modern way of life. So getting the balance right is always hard, and I definitely don't nail it at all. I think we all spend too much time on our phones and in front of a telly and things like that. But definitely feel lucky to have grown up in the West Country, surrounded by its beautiful nature and scenery, where you can kind of keeps you grounded and aware of what's around you in the natural world. So I probably I feel like I'm kind of in between the two,
Talking about food, Dorset apple cake or Cornish pasty?
Oh, I think a pasty is one of the best things that Cornwall has ever given us. Yeah. There's some good shanty bands down there as well, and obviously tin is important. But Dorset apple cake's really good. I don't know what makes it Dorset. I think it's just apple cake, but suppose they just put Dorset on it. I'm not sure what the difference is between normal apple cake and Dorset apple cake. I think probably a pasty.
Is there, I mean, I talked to your team as well for the interview, and nobody was able to name a typical Dorset food, like recipe, something like that. There was a cheese. There were
Yeah,
those
blue Vinny.
breadcrumbs.
Dorset knobs.
Knobs.
Oh,
So pasty would have won again. So
Mrs. Morse, she's over near Bridport. She created the Dorset knobs. She makes amazing biscuits. Hot cross buns are insane. I don't even know if she's still, it might be family or just the name of the brand, but Mrs. Moore's is the name of the brand. Great biscuits, great hot crust buns. But what are Dorset knobs? They're like a bread roll that's been dried out to like a cracker, but it's like that big. So you can't fit it in your mouth. And I don't know, some people like you meant to have it with cheese or you dunk it in your tea. Yeah, that's odd.
it's not either sweet or salty. It's nothing. It's just dry.
It's just really, it's like a really boring breadstick. So no, biscuits are great. I don't personally really enjoy the Dorset knobs. It's not a sentence, that's what I'd
So
say.
maybe for tea and coffee.
Yeah.
Tea or coffee?
Tea.
Tea?
Yeah.
Sparkling tea as well?
Yeah.
Probably in the future.
Yeah. I think it's a really exciting category. I'm keen to try more of the. I think if you're going to look at low and no alcohol, I think de-alkalizing beer and wine maybe isn't the way to go. I think you kind of leave that to it needs the alcohol, but actually look at alternatives like kombuchas, like sparkling teas, things like that can be really fun. Like people playing with like ginger and chili as well to kind of give the heat.
Yeah.
That's really fun. So yeah, I think there's some going to be some exciting projects coming as not de-alcoholized like alcoholic beverages. They're actually their own category and their own blends, which I think is probably the way to go.
And now the question that separates the country. Scones. Jam and cream or cream and then jam?
Cream and jam every time. Like jam and cream is yeah, there should be high punishment for that, I think. There's two arguments to this, I think. Firstly, if you take a piece of toast or bread or anything and you're going to have some butter and jam or dairy and jam, you'd always go dairy first, then jam. No one goes and puts the jam on and then tries to spread dairy on top. That just doesn't work. And then the afternoon tea was invented in Devon. As Lady Bedford had a scone with cream, then jam with clotted cream. And this is important. It was Devonshire clotted cream, really thick cream that you could spread a really thick layer on and then get a big dollop of jam on it. There's a few things better in the world than that. But then the Cornish way was they were using whipped cream. And so they would try and put their whipped cream on the bottom and a hot scone and it would just melt and then they couldn't put a jam on it. Oh, it's just chaos. So they went jam and then whipped cream on top. And yeah, a proper scone afternoon tea, it's got to be clotted cream. Nice thick layer on the top.
And if I just leave the cream and just take the jam straight on the scones?
That's even worse.
That's even worse.
Yeah.
Then topping
If
up.
I saw you do it, I'd just grab your scone and bin it. Which would hurt me to put food in the bin.
Actually, I like the idea because usually people decide to go either or. And then I talked to Courtney from Sandwich and she said, no, you can just use the jam.
No, you can't.
Okay.
No.
Thanks for joining Food History with Tommy Grimshaw.
I encourage people to be generally open-minded and explore things, but no, that's wrong.
No, that's wrong. Okay.
Yeah. I'm a proud Devon boy, and yeah, if you're gonna have a scone, clotted cream, then jam.
Okay, I will learn from that. Talking about innovations such as leaving the cream from scones.
That's not an innovation, that's just a mistake.
That's stupid. Okay, I got it. There was this co-founder project we talked about. When was it? At ProWine, I guess.
Yeah,
A co-founder in CAC.
yeah.
How? And why? Interesting.
Why? During as the lockdowns were easing with COVID in the UK, there's some silly rule where you could only go for a drink if you had a substantial meal, and obviously a substantial meal is quite vague. So my buddy Toby, who works for Penfolds, he's from Dorset, and we thought, right, we'll go around Dorchester town, our local town, and just try every establishment and work out where we could get the most amount of drink for the smallest substantial meal. We found one place that would do us a breadstick and a Negroni each, and we could share a bottle of rosé. But we each had to eat one breadstick as a substantial meal. So that became the go-to.
That's funny. Okay.
There's one place for every beer you had to have a Scotch egg. So you could only have like 3 beers, and then it's like full of beer and Scotch egg, and it's just a bit too much. Anyway, I thought we'd try Wetherspoons just to see, what they're offering. It wasn't great, but I noticed that they had Prosecco Frizzante on tap. So I was like, oh, interesting. They're pouring 2-bar pressure sparkling wine from tap, and people are like going mad for it. So I was like, okay, that works. The actual like physical dispensing of a keg of 2-bar pressure wine works. And I didn't want to make Charmat method wines. It's not where my skill set or again where my passion is. But we'd made some Col Fondos before for us, and also for some clients. We did a bit of contract winemaking, and so I was pretty confident. I really enjoyed Col Fondo as a style. So it's still a second fermentation in the bottle, but it's with the indigenous yeast. So you trigger a second fermentation just by adding a small amount of sugar. But you do it before the yeast from the first fermentation has died, so it's kind of just in a bit of a dormancy period.
So what is it, kind of a pet nut then?
It's like a cross between pet nat and traditional method, I guess.
Okay.
I think like true pet nat, you bottle it on the first fermentation before the first fermentation is finished, and that's how you keep that natural pétillance. Whereas Col Fondo, you ferment it, the first one dry, like you would a base wine for traditional method, and then you do a second fermentation. But it's always lower pressure. Mm-hmm. And Col Fondo means with the bottom or with the foot, so it's always cloudy. You don't disgorge it. Yeah. So it's kind of drinks like a pet nat, but the production is probably more similar to trad method. It's fun. I like it. But rather than a second fermentation in bottle, I thought, why don't we try and do it in the keg, and then you could dispense it from the keg. And I asked loads of people for some advice on this, and even the Key Keg, who the company I was buying the kegs from, and they were like, no, we advise you don't do that. I was like, why? Is that, wow, no one does that. I was like, well, okay, but I want to do it. So they let me buy 3 kegs as a trial, and we did that from the 2020 vintage, and it worked really well. It was good fun. And
so the fermentation took place in the keg?
Yeah, so all the fermentations take place
fun.
in every individual keg, and then pours 2-bar pressure. Yeah, it's really fun. It's really fun.
That's pretty cool. What is it, 25 litres, 50 litres?
20 litres.
20 litres.
It's really good for like festivals and things, because you don't have loads of glass bottles to take around.
White or red?
That's white, sparkling. But we could do red. Could do red.
Does Chardonnay?
Orange. Varies from year to year. Mostly Pinot.
Mm.
I love Pinot, man.
Convinced. Okay, cool. And the second one you told me about just 2 days ago, I guess, it was this beer and grape fusion thing.
Yeah.
What is behind that?
That's a brewery in Bristol.
Yeah.
Called Left Handed Giant. They actually came to us, and they were like, we really want to do this fusion, this collaboration, how can it work? And we bounced back a few ideas of how we thought it could work, and they ended up taking some juice and some grape, like whole clusters, from us in 2023. Mm-hmm. And they started a brew. They chose specific hops and things, and they have to take. I can't take any credit for this. This is purely their work, and they basically co-fermented the beer with our grape juice and some whole clusters in it, and the result is just the most amazing smashable drink. That's just a really good fun collaboration between 2 West Country producers.
Do you have something to try over here?
Yeah.
What is the resulting product? Is it like a IPA style, like a fruity fresh beer with 5% alcohol?
Almost like, I don't know. It almost tastes like slightly shandy-esque. Like it's so fresh and vibrant, almost citrus with with I guess some of the hops they've chosen to go with the obviously the acidity you get from our juice.
The alcohol is at 5.
So at 5%, yeah.
Yeah, okay. So higher than shandy.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Sounds cool.
It's really good fun. Really good fun. It's called Blender. It hasn't come out yet.
Oh, okay.
So but Left Handed Giant, they'll do their release on it when they're ready. I think in a month or 2's time.
Sounds great.
So keep an eye out for that. And they've got a really cool tap house and tap room in Bristol, like right on the waterfront. It's massive. Great pizzas, a whole range of amazing beers. They're really cool.
I'll put the link in the show notes.
Yeah, should check out
some credits.
Check out Left Handed Giant.
Okay. There's a lot going on, actually. It's fun.
Yeah. Yeah,
The
keeps
spirits,
us
beer,
on our
wine.
toes. Yeah.
Sparkling still.
Yeah, I
Very
think
cool.
that's a nice thing about English wine is we're such a new industry and a new region that we can experiment quite a lot. And I think we should make the most of that and constantly learn, constantly try to improve. You know, I don't, the grand scheme of things, don't know that much. So, you know, every year there's room to improve. There's lessons learned. There's new ideas, and it's just being, you know, making sure you have the freedom to explore some of these ideas. A lot of the time they don't lead anywhere, but sometimes you just come across something exciting.
Yeah, it's very cool. Anything passionate about besides wine? You mentioned cooking.
Yeah, I love like walking on the coast path as well. You know, growing up in the southwest, it's like the longest uninterrupted footpath in the UK. Get some pool round to Minehead. So I'm doing that with a couple of really good mates of mine, which is really good fun.
You did 80% already? What is it?
No, we've actually only done maybe just over 50%.
Okay.
Yeah, but yeah, it's just really good fun just to clear your head, you know, just literally spitting one foot in front of the other, but you know, for 20 miles a day, and we try and do like 2 or 3 days at a time, camping
20
out.
miles a day.
Yeah,
Wow.
and then we like camp out, cook some food, swim. Yeah, just sometimes chat about nonsense. Sometimes actually like just check in on each other and you know, check we're all right. And yeah, I think it's really important. So yeah, I love walking. Just being in the sea generally. No, I don't think I could ever live too far from the sea.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. How far is it from here?
From the vineyard, I think it's maybe like 12 miles. But yeah, from my house, it's like a 10-15 minute drive.
The wind we are currently having is sea wind, I guess.
Yeah, it's
Coming
mostly from the
sea.
southwest. So sort of over my shoulder here is the southwest. Coming off the Atlantic, we've got a nice big hill there, which is kind of protecting us from big storms. But we're getting that nice gentle breeze, which will be important during flowering and sort of during Wimbledon.
To dry.
Yeah, and it just, you know, they're all self-pollinating, wind-pollinated. So we need a gentle breeze. We don't want it to be completely still. We also, it's good for helping disease pressure. Keeping it all flowing through stops any humidity. But yeah.
I don't know how to make the transition because I wanted to ask you about guilty pleasures on food.
Just go straight in with that.
Any guilty pleasures, maybe unexpected ones?
I don't know, like, I'm a sucker for most things Italian. Like, whether it's pizzas or your pastas. To be honest, like comfort foods, just like cheesy beans on toast is always good.
Jeans. Okay.
I think that's probably quite a British thing.
For breakfast?
No, leave the cheese off for breakfast. But yeah.
Oh, yeah, okay.
Yeah, to be honest, I'll eat most. There's not many things I won't eat. But yeah, I love to cook as much as I can and host friends and have, you know, I'm lucky I've got amazing family and amazing friends around me. So yeah, I love to like cook for them and have them all around, and you know, I really feed off having groups of people. I'm not someone who really enjoys just sitting on their own.
Yeah.
I like being around people. I like the sort of social side of life.
Yeah. Very important thing, especially when you turn older.
Yeah.
There's a bigger value on time and friends and people. Yeah. That is a good transition to my last question. When are you going to buy that lamp for your wife? Credit to Emma.
Yeah. Is that a question Emma wanted you to
Yeah.
ask? When am I going to buy her a lamp? We'll see.
That's not what she would expect, I guess. I tried it, Emma, sorry.
Yeah, I don't know. Well, she's just drawn France in the work sweepstake at the Euros, so if she wins that, I think she can buy the lamp herself.
Bring over. Okay. French lamp then.
Yeah, it's actually our anniversary just after this comes out, so yeah. But it's meant to be paper, so she might get a paper lamp.
On the card, printed. Yeah, okay.
Yeah.
Maybe late. Maybe for the anniversary. Okay. That was amazing. Thank you so much.
That's a pleasure.
Pleasure.
Anytime, man. Anytime.
With a great place to have an interview. The first vineyards of Langham.
Yeah, and I like how you started giving everyone a free hat when you interviewed them.
No, just you actually.
No, you said to me as every guest.
Puts pressure on me.
Come on Alex's podcast, he gives you a free hat.
Yeah, probably. If you come over and you're a Pinot fan, then yeah, right. It attracts even the bird. Wow, there are many of them. Thanks a lot. Let's have some lunch right now, I guess.
Yeah,
Time's up.
definitely lunchtime.
Cool. Thanks for listening, guys. See you on Saturday for the weekly update.